Welcome to this 11th video on zero-based budgeting and cash flow management using the Managing My Money Excel tool. This tool revolves around creation and management of a zero-based budget. In this video, I will give a demonstration of the reporting capability of the spreadsheet. In this demo, I will show how to use reporting to accomplish some basic inquiries. First, let's drill down into a specific category. I want to see how much I spent in January on eating out and where that money was spent. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and pick the drop-down list for January to set the date. Then I'm going to select an individual category, and I will pick eating out from the category list. And I'll run the report. So this report will then show me basically all the transactions for that category along with the total spend. I can see that in the month of January, I spent $272.72 on eating out. Okay, and then it shows me the list of where I ate at. So now I want to see how much did I spend on eating out across multiple months, say January and February. So I'm going to go ahead and change my end date to February 28th, and then I'll just rerun the report. And we'll see a little bit of a different view here. What it's going to do is it will provide a breakdown for each month. So it shows that in January I spent $273, and in February I spent the same amount, which is not coincidental since for my data I use here I just copied from month to month. But here you can get a breakdown of where that money was spent by clicking the hyperlink. So click this eating out hyperlink here. And in addition to showing me the total of $545 I spent in January and February, if I look to the right, I can see a breakdown of where that was spent. So how much was spent at Jamba Juice, Panera Bread, Raising Cane's, each of these had its breakdown and where the money was spent. Okay, so now let's say I look here and I say, oh, I spent a lot of money at Panera Bread in January. I want to see how much I spent year to date eating at Panera Bread. Okay, so in this case, I'm going to go ahead and click the year to date, and that'll set my date from January to the current day. And then I'm going to go ahead and make sure that I have eating out selected, and I'll go ahead and run my report. We'll see that this report looks very similar to the previous one, except it just shows me, all of the months. So in this case, you can see again, because of the data, I just copied it from month to month. It shows the same spending each month. And if I click the hyperlink here, it will then show me year to date, I spent $1,091 on eating out. And I can see that of that $1,091 from January to end of April, I spent $304 on Panera Bread, and then I can see the dates of where I went to Panera Bread and how much I spent eating there. Okay, so now I want to show you how you can get the same kind of information from the tracking sheet using only filters. Okay, so in this case, we're going to go to the tracking sheet where we actually have our transactions. And I'm going to go and ask the same questions, right? So what I wanted to do is to find out how much I spent in January. So I'll come over here and I will filter on the month of January. And I wanted to see how much I spent on the category of eating out in January. So I'll go ahead and click here and type in a filter of eating out. I'll just type in eating, it'll pick it for me. And if you look at the top right here, $272.73 was spent on eating out. So that's the same amount of that was in the report, and it shows the same data. So I also in the report gave an example where I wanted to see both January and February spend on eating out. So in this case, I can just increase my filter to include January and February. And now I see a total of $545 spent eating out, and it's expanded January and February. Then lastly, I had the question, well, how much did I spend specifically at Panera Bread year to date? So I can do that again, the same as I did in the report, by clicking all the months in in the current year. So I'll pick all the months. And in this case, I want to go ahead and add a filter for Panera Bread. So I'll just type in Panera. It should pop up, hit OK, and there you go. So I spent $304.44 at Panera Bread year to date. If I look at my report, right, which we had pulled up, there's that $344.44. So running this report and doing this in using filters gives me the same information. So what then is the benefit or the difference of using the reports versus just coming to the tracking sheet and using filters, which is actually quite powerful? There's two main benefits or differences. The first is in the scope of presentation. So if I go to the report, you can see that the report lets, the graphs here let you analyze relative spending. For example, I can easily see from the year-to-date report here that, as I mentioned, that I spent exactly the same amount eating out each month of this year. Now, in reality, that wouldn't be the case, but I can see relatively how much I've spent easily. On the tracking sheet, I would not be able to do that, right? Not easily. I'd have to compute it, right? The other thing is that I can easily see the exact amount from the small sunburst chart. I can see, for example, the top 5 locations that I spent dining out were, if I click on this, there's Panera Bread is my top one. My second one was Raising Cane's. My third was Snooze Eatery, and my fourth was Spring Creek Barbecue. So on the tracking report, it doesn't easily call that out to me where I can see the relative spend using these charts. The other thing I can see here, for example, is on the Panera Bread, I can see that I went to Panera Bread almost 20 times, right? I can see that by all of these individual implementations, and I can see that my the things I spent at Panera Bread ranged from $4 expenses down here, $7, $13, all the way up to $29. So I had a range of expenses. I can see that, and I can also see that in contrast, at Snooze I only went there 4 times, and they're all about the same amount. I can see from the sizes of the breakdown here. So there's a lot of information that you can see visually in presentation that you can't see just by filtering on the track sheet, which might help you if you're analyzing your expenses. Okay, that was one difference, is the scope of presentation. The second one is the scope in the actual content. What that means is that the track filter method has one significant limitation. It works perfectly well for categories that were not involved in any split during the period. For example, in eating out, the ones I've been showing you here, there's no splits. However, if a category that I'm looking to drill down and do some analysis on was included in a split, then those expenses will not show on the using the tracking filters. They will show on this report details screen. So I'll give you an example. Let's use clothing as an example. So first we'll run a year-to-date report for clothing expenses, and then we'll filter for those on the tracking sheet. So what I'll do is I'll go here and I'll just change this one here to clothing and run the report, and we'll see that my clothing expenses, and I'll click on it to get a drill down. I spent a total of $529 on clothing year to date, right? And I see all the expenses down here. Now you'll see that the range that I spent $11, $13, $8, but there's a set of $100 expenses which were spent to clothing on Amazon. Now if I go to my tracking sheet and I do the same thing, I basically say, okay, I want to go the whole year, and this time I want my category to be clothing. So just type in clothing, enter. You'll see that it only shows $128 of expenses compared to my $528 of expenses. And it also shows that all my expenses, none of them are over about $15, right? Whereas on my report, I see that there's this set stands out of like $100 expenses. But if I look at the vendor is Amazon. So on the tracking sheet, just to show you what's going on here, if I go ahead and add, I'll just add to the filter, instead of just clothing, I'm going to go ahead and add in clothing and splits, because that's the one limitation that the tracking sheet really doesn't help you with, is if they're in splits. So you'll see that I had 1, 2, 3, 4 splits, and they're the same amount because, again, I just copied them for this demo. If I open the split to see what's in there, I'll see that one of the items in there was a $100 expense for clothing, right? So that's where the one limitation on using these filters, it won't necessarily pull out things that are in splits, and the report will. Okay, so now let's expand the reports to look across multiple categories. So we've been looking for now under a single category, either eating out or clothing. But in this case, if you look here under expenses, I'm going to click the all button, right? And just update the report. And we'll see what happens here. So now, because I picked all the expenses, as you might expect, it's now going to show all my expenses. It shows a month-by-month spend report for all categories. For example, I can see that I spent the most across the board in April, right? So $5,900. And I spent the least in February, not counting May, which just started. It's only on May 2nd today. So at the top, it also shows that during this time period, I recorded $24,033 in income, and as opposed to $23,130 in expenses, which leaves about $895 more income than I brought in than I spent. Now, you have to be very careful with this information. This is informational only. As I showed in a previous video on forecasting and cash flow, which if you're interested in that, please watch that video. You should definitely not be making spending decisions based upon this information here. This is just more informational. In the video on cash flow and forecasting, we know that you need to look at your annual plan and your forecast sheet to determine future cash flow needs before you commit to use any money that appears to be extra. But I'm trying to just show you here what you kind of get out of the reporting capabilities. So on the top on the right, it also shows that I have contributed a total of $5,125 towards my goals. This is split between the savings of $3,725 and debt reduction of $1,400. So this is just a high-level overview of those. The sunburst chart in the middle here shows the relative spend of each category. For example, I can see that my highest spending categories were home maintenance, followed by rent, followed by groceries, followed by office supplies, etc. So you can kind of see the breakdown of your expenses here. Now, you can get an individual drill down into each category in one of two ways. Just like previously, you can click any of the hyperlinks on the left. For example, if we click on medical here, it will then show me my medical expenses for across year to date, right? Spent a total of $506 in medical expenses across 2 different suppliers, right? Another one might be, for example, if I were to go to office supplies, right? Again, you'll see that there's, I can see that there are a few major vendors here, like Office Max was a big one, and then Amazon. So those might have been, those are probably in the splits, by the way, right? Tech savvy computers, etc. So and I see all the details here. A second way that you can get the same drill down is by clicking on one of the categories on this sunburst here. That will take 2 clicks. For example, let's look at the highest one, let's say, which is the home maintenance. So I want to see that one. I can click once to get into target view and then click again for it to actually give me the drill down report on home maintenance. Or let's say that I want to see groceries. I can click once to get in this mode and then click again, and it will generate for me the drill down report on groceries. So now you might want to also, there's one more thing that you might want to be looking at here. You might want to know what I see, how much I spent in January, February, March, April, etc. But I want to know how much I spent on recurring monthly expenses versus the non-recurring annual expenses. So there's actually 2 views that you can see here. The first one shows a breakout of monthly and annual expenses, and the second one is the one that we're looking at now, which just has everything into a single expense per month. So the way that you get the breakout view is you have to do two things before you click Update Report. First, you have to make sure that the All button is selected for the expenses scope. Then you have to make sure that you then pick Fiscal Year to Date on the top. The combination of those two is a trigger that when you generate the report, it will then give you a breakout of the monthly recurring expenses. So for example, in January, I spent $2,149 on monthly expenses and $3,600 on annual. And if I look down, it'll show me which of these were annual expenses, like clothing, auto insurance, auto maintenance, and which were monthly recurring. My car payment, my fuel, my eating out, things like that. So remember, so it's clicking the all expenses and then clicking year to date. Now, because the year to date is not showing, if I just simply click Update Report again, I'll now get the collapsed view because the report's saying, oh, you don't have year to date selected showing. I'll still give you January through May, but I'm going to give you the consolidated view. So that we've been looking at to this point all about expenses. Let's move on to two other views. So if you look on the view drop down, you have also views on income, savings, and debt reduction. So let's look at the savings view. So if I click on savings, it pulls up another view of the report that shows a table that shows all saving contributions for each month of the year. And then there's also two graphs below the table. The first one shows the total accumulated savings as it grows month to month. And the second chart shows the savings each month. So this is in my January savings. You can look down here. January, February, March, April are here. And then this shows the accumulation of those over time. So I can see here that April was my largest saving month. You can see it here. And that January was my lowest, and you can see that both here on the chart. You can also look at it by looking at the totals up on the bar graph. Again, some people like looking at tables, some people like looking at the charts. So now let's look at another view, which is debt reduction. So the debt reduction shows the same type of information as we saw in the savings goals. The bar graph on the right shows that I paid a large amount towards debt reduction in January, but I've been lowering my debt reduction payments each month since. So you can see here a big payment followed by progressively smaller payments. The graph on the left shows that my total debt reduction contribution has therefore grown over time to almost $1,500, but it's been slowing down as I go. Okay. So a different way of looking at both savings and debt reduction progress reporting, a different report is shown by clicking at the bottom under the goal tracker sheet. If you click the goal tracker sheet, this shows you the same information that we just looked at in terms of savings goals and debt reduction, but in a different view. The graphs on the right-hand side are for individual savings or debt reduction goals. In this example, I have 3 savings goals and 1 debt reduction goal. You're not limited to 3. You can have as many goals as you want. But the 2 graphs on the left here are the sum total of all the ones on the right. So in other words, this shows my individual progress towards my savings plan, towards my 401k, towards my emergency fund. If I add them all together, that is then charted in my total savings progress. And the same thing at the bottom, although since in this demo I only have 1 debt reduction goal, there's nothing to add, so these 2 charts will look pretty much identical. Okay, so in these charts, the flat blue lines on the top for savings and the flat gray line for debt reduction are targets for the year. They're the targets that we established when we generated our zero-based budget and put goal targets in. The dashed lines show the monthly plan we set to get to our target, and the increasing solid lines show the actual savings or debt reduction contributions to date. Remember, on the debt reduction, we had made a a big contribution of 500 at the top, so it went from 0 to 500 immediately, and then slowly it's been slowing down, right? So we actually went above our plan, and we've slowed down to where right now we're actually on plan. So if I wanted to continue, I would need to then give a more steady rate of contribution towards debt reduction. Um, on my 401k, it's been exactly every month I've been contributing exactly what I had planned to, so I'm straight on target. My emergency fund, I can see that I've contributed every other month. I've contributed enough to get me up to my target, right? Um, and then on the savings plan, I started out slow, and then I realized I needed to catch up and created and then did a big jump. I hope you found value in what you saw in the demo and what this spreadsheet can do for you. If you did, you can send an email to mmm.expenseplanning@gmail.com for instructions on how to download and use the spreadsheet. A reminder of the prerequisites are that it requires a local version of Microsoft Excel running on Windows 10 operating system.